The last section I would like to talk about, and for me the more exciting side of coaching archery and coaching compounds specifically, is around training plans. So on slide number 47, you will see to succeed, you must plan. For me, you can see two of our more successful Asian teams here. That's the South Korean men's team, the Chinese Taipei women's team, who both won the World Championships in the Netherlands last year. They did not win these medals without a plan. It took years for them to develop to this stage. It is not necessarily the only thing they did well. They obviously would have worked on their technical skills, their mental skills, their equipment, their fitness. These are all part of their development in reaching this stage. But in my mind, the planning portion is the biggest area that you as an Asian nation can be doing to develop your athletes faster than other nations around the world. So training plans. Training plans, I feel, is the greatest area for growth in the Asian compound archery world. Often I feel Asian archers are shooting many arrows in a monotonous fashion, which can be very, very helpful for their development, mind you. But what you typically see them doing is shooting a lot of arrows in a monotonous fashion, and then as a major event comes closer, they will throw in some simple scoring rounds, and their focus, I think, typically is more on the quantity versus the quality side of things. So for me, that can be helpful and can be necessary at some stages, but with the compound side of the sport being more mentally challenging than recurve, I feel like actually the quality versus the quantity is more important. I think a compound archer needs to be more comfortable with shooting with extremely close scores in very tight competitions than, say, their recurve counterparts. This quality-driven training plan is the glue that's going to connect the mental side of things, the physical side of things, the technical side of things, and even can test your equipment in these types of scenarios. For me personally, coming into the Chinese Taipei team in 2017 and 2018, this, I think, was the biggest area of change for them. The form needed some work. The equipment needed some work. The mental and physical side was worked upon. But the training plan was, in my mind, the biggest and boldest change for them as a team. What you can see here is actually, in this image on this slide, is the whiteboard at the range. And for me, it was something that I worked on a daily basis. So each day the archers would come in, and a part of my master plan was to actually write up each week and each day and break down the responsibility of the archers and the program for the day, the week, and the month, and even further to that as well. For me, showing that and having some sort of structure to our plans was vitally important. Now, to that point, master plans. Moving on to slide number 49, creating a master plan, or what you could term as a long-term plan, is quite simple. Often when you talk to archers or coaches about this, you're going to get a lot of, oh, it needs to be very complex, and I don't know how to make that. That's very difficult. But actually the KISS method, or keep it simple method, is the best way. A simple document that leads into more complex weekly plans is all that is necessary. And in fact, on slide 49, you'll see in the bottom right-hand portion, that's actually the first couple of pages of my plan, or my master plan, for the Chinese Taipei team in 2017. What that plan did was define the program goals. So what is the bigger picture? What do we want to get at the end of the season? So that could be KPI results that often the national government will say you need to win a medal in this event or in that event. It understood, or it took into account, the dates and any sort of intermediate goals you wanted to do along the way. So if you want to have success at World Championships, perhaps, you should probably have a success at a World Cup beforehand. So it's making sure these steps are defined along the way. What I also did in this plan, or this planning system, was to define the areas of growth. So I would look at the group, look at the all areas of the group. So not just the athletes themselves, but the program support, the coaches, the equipment, and define what they are in that plan. Understanding the athletes' skills and their goals was also important in that. And from that information, I would then create what I call blocks. So for me, a block is about 2 to 3 months in total. I don't like to create too many blocks at a time. I can actually plan the whole year in terms of blocks, but once I start making those blocks, because each block is about 3 months long, I try and stick to one block at a time in terms of each week within it. Going past that point is something that can be dangerous because you can very quickly change some of your plans once you see some of the issues that are occurring. Now, once I had the goals, once I then defined the areas of growth, once I looked at the blocks and what I wanted to have within each one of those, then I'd also throw in there domestic scoring events, trials, camps, and from that create my weekly training plans. After a certain block, so after say 2 to 3 months, I would then make sure I sit and reassess this process or reassess this master plan to ensure that we were still on track for our main goals. Now, I do make a little note there around, it is easier to manage this typically when all of your athletes are at a similar level. So if you have a whole group of very high performing athletes, this type of plan obviously is a little bit easier. When you have also a whole group of developing athletes, this is typically easier. When you have the range of athletes from a few of the high level athletes and a few of the developing level athletes, this can get much trickier. But in terms of writing out the plan, the structure is still the same and still something that has to have the goals, look for their growth areas, set your blocks, plot in your domestic competitions, and then create your weekly training plans, and then finally revisit and reassess where possible. So now you know about creating a master plan for your training plans or a long-term plan. We can now look at the weekly training plan portion. Here's where you can have a lot of fun and also a lot of variety. For me, they're very easy to create. A week snapshot of what you are doing and when. You can fill in, or you should fill in, the areas you know that you can't change, whether that's the athlete's work, gym sessions, fitness sessions. That should obviously go in there first. Competitions perhaps, and then work around that, thinking about your master plan to aid your archers. This is something we talked about already, is that this can be the glue that combines a series of factors around your technical and mental skills, and perhaps your fitness and test your equipment. Now, once the technique and execution is relatively consistent for a compound archer, I feel, and this is a little bit different to what most people will suggest, I think, in the Asian region, that a very high percentage of scoring arrows are required in a compound training plan. Now, it's a little different, but that's because compound archery is so mentally taxing. You must get prepared and ready for this type of competition. Now, this can be added relatively early to a compound archer's development. They can still be working on the technical aspects and still be scoring quite regularly. That's something that I think Asian coaches might struggle with a little bit, and one that I suggest you highly consider. Try and add more scoring rounds to even a developing compounder's schedule. Now, You as a coach must balance the variety in your sessions. So that's, the gym, your shooting, your technical work, your volume even in there. Creating a variety can be very helpful and something that you want to be planning strategically for the development of your athletes. Now, the drills, the games can help your archers understand themselves, their processes, and what strategies they could use in those situations. So this is where you can watch your athletes and see. I often film, large chunks of scoring rounds, not just to catch the technical aspects, but to catch the physical and mental attributes as well. Whether that's, a lack of focus as they get deeper into a round or too much focus. So really be mindful that these drills, they'll help to lead archers towards their personal goals and that of the program. So you can use these drills to your advantage. Now, in saying this, it's very hard to simulate the stress of scoring at the world level. I don't care who you are and how good you are at imagining these sorts of stresses, it's not the same. So these types of games are very difficult. You can do it in some instances, and we'll talk about some games in some following slides, but just know that it's difficult to do so. For your archers, you might not have fully, 100% training archers. You might have jobs and schools. It's very rare that compound archers can just be compound archers. You typically have to do school or work. But from my perspective, even 100 arrows, just 3 to 5 times a week, with a clear plan that has a good percentage of scoring in it, can be high enough quality for an amazing success in the compound realm. So don't feel like they have to be doing, as a million arrows a week. It's a bit of a stretch, but 2,000 arrows a week is not necessary. You can get this low down to 300 to 500 and have some fantastic results. Now, in slide 50, you will see them sitting, my team or my former team, sitting on some chairs and shooting. I have a lot of variety in my training programs for this group. You'll see also in slide 51 that I love variety in my training. So you'll see on the left, we have a mixed team drill. We also have on the top right, that's actually an indoor 40 centimeter single spot pulled all the way out to 50 meters, and something we did regularly with these guys to focus on their timing and aiming skills. And in the bottom right hand corner, you'll see I invited a series of schools because I wanted to be strategic around the development of more athletes in the future in Chinese Taipei or in Taiwan. And that was a great pre-Asian Games preparation camp. Now, moving on to slide 52, this is actually a snapshot of some of our week's training plans from Chinese Taipei. You'll see that in one I've color coordinated it for you, and the one below it is just a plain simple white. You can use drills and games on a daily basis. You can use standard volume as well. I actually quite like the melding of the two, which is a more modern approach in the coaching realm, with the more Asian approach of training hard to bring great results. So drills and games are very easy to change, very easy to set up. And in fact, you probably have created some already in your daily training environment. So there are a number of variables, and this slide shows those, which is the number of arrows that you're shooting, the timing that you take to shoot those arrows, the distance that you shoot it at, and the size space that you're shooting at as well. So, you can change those 4 variables very, very easy. It's something that you should consider on a regular basis. And if you are changing, say, the arrow number to a higher frequency, instead of 6 arrows, shooting 9 or 12, this can create a fatigue or concentration fact. If you then lower the number of arrows to, say, 1 to 3 arrows, this can get you into that competition readiness and stress management side of things. With timing, adding faster clocks, also less time to shoot your arrows, can really invoke rhythm in the archers. Slowing it down can look at comp simulation or competition simulation and the concentration factor for your athletes. Changing the distance changes the weather skills, the bow setup, and execution, so how well they execute their shot. Up shorter, so moving your target up close, like in a Vegas style competition, you'll see that it'll actually create some stress management, so don't miss, I can't miss when the target's nice and close. The face size, making it smaller typically is about the aiming and timing skills as well. I do not suggest having a large size face up close. I usually suggest the reduction of target faces only. So if you're putting up a big target face, be mindful that might not be helpful to your archers. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, I'm a coach and I'm an athlete as well. I like to shoot my bow, and I often will challenge our archers to competition. And for me, you can see here the two archers that I would compete against on that day. I was successful against one and then lost against the other. I am a coach that am comfortable doing what I ask of the athletes. So feel free to join in these types of matches or find people to bring into these kinds of matches that can bring different scenarios, situations to your athletes, and that will benefit them in a competition aspect. Please be considerate of how you think about it in a training aspect, in a development aspect as well. And finally, my last slide, number 54, is questions. Now, we've covered off a lot of information today. So we've looked at the state of the sport in the world. We've looked at why it's growing in Asia and where it struggles within the region. We've asked the question about development of compound archery. What does it take? We looked into 5 separate areas for the development of compound: the technical, the mental, the physical, the equipment, and then the training plans. Now, I haven't covered everything here. There's actually a lot we haven't been able to get into. That's partly because of the time and also partly just because of the content. So for me, there is a lot we can discuss in the question and answer section. I really hope you took some kind of benefit from our discussion tonight. In the future, I really wish you all the best and hope your athletes the best on the shooting range. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.